Ethan Brooks and Marcus Hill would never forget that blizzard night in Red Pine, Wyoming. The night they and their partner Ryan Carter were drugged, bound, and left to die inside an abandoned house set ablaze. Ethan's lungs burned as he struggled to pry his eyes open through the suffocating smoke, and through the haze he saw a gray shape leap through the fire. It was Shadow, the German shepherd they had once thought dead for 2 long years. The dog ripped through their ropes, dragged each man towards safety, and used his own body to shield them from the flames. Ryan never woke, and by the time they reached the hospital, he was gone. From that night forward, Ethan and Marcus swore to hunt down whoever had tried to silence them, and Shadow became their living proof that miracles walk this earth. Snow fell in heavy sheets over the quiet mountain town of Red Pine, the kind of night where even the wind felt frozen in its tracks. The main street was deserted, neon signs flickering over shuttered diners, the groan of ice-burdened pine trees echoing in the distance. 2 miles out, along a rutted dirt road swallowed by drifts, stood an abandoned cabin the locals called the Mill House. Tonight its windows glowed not with warmth but with an angry orange light, fire licking at the night. Up on the ridge, a lone figure moved, Shadow, a 7-year-old German shepherd with thick sable and black fur crusted with frost. Once he had worked with the state police, until he vanished after an ambush 2 winters ago. Rumors said he died under the rubble. Some claimed he'd gone wild. But he had survived, clinging to fragments of training, to the instinct that tied him to the men he once served. Tonight the scent on the wind was not prey, but gasoline and fear. Inside the cabin, Ethan stirred on the scorched wooden floor. At 38, he carried the quiet strength of a veteran detective. 15 years on the force and an old injury in his left knee that still ached when the weather turned. His wrists were tied behind him with coarse rope, the cuffs of his navy winter jacket singed black. Smoke clawed at his lungs. Beside him lay Marcus Hill, 33, a former Marine turned deputy with the restlessness of someone who had seen too much combat and not enough peace. His short brown hair clung to his head under a sweat-stained patrol cap. His breath shallow and quick as his eyes flicked toward the doorway where flames crawled across the ceiling beams. He tried to free his arms, but the rope only bit into his skin. Ryan Carter, the youngest at 29, had barely begun his career with the Red Pine PD. A boyish face, sandy hair plastered to his forehead, and a reputation for volunteering for holiday shifts and carrying dog treats in his cruiser, just in case. Now he lay sprawled on his back, unmoving, lips blue from smoke and cold. The cabin around them was no shelter but a trap, its doors padlocked from the outside, windows nailed shut, gasoline soaking the floor. Ethan coughed hard, vision swimming. "Marcus," he rasped. "Check Ryan." Marcus scooted closer, boots scraping, then hissed through clenched teeth. "He's out cold. Pulse is weak." The fire cracked like gunfire as the ceiling groaned above them. Smoke pressed low, thick and poisonous. Up on the ridge, Shadow stiffened. He knew that smell. He knew that sound. He tore down the slope, snow spraying under his paws. At the porch, he sniffed once at the door, lowered his shoulder and rammed it. The frame shuddered. Again and again. On the 3rd strike, the padlock twisted, hinges splitting, hot air blasting outward. Shadow plunged inside. Through the smoke, Ethan saw the shape emerge. Broad shoulders, ears pricked forward, moving low and fast. "What the?" he rasped. Marcus's eyes went wide. "That's a dog." Shadow padded to Ryan first, sniffed his cheek, then turned to the others. He nosed the ropes and bit down, teeth snapping fiber. Ethan's wrists burned as the ropes frayed, but he was free. He stumbled to his knees, coughing. "Marcus next," he croaked. Shadow circled and shredded Marcus's bindings. Marcus yanked his arms loose and crawled straight to Ryan, hauling him up. "Help me," he barked, and together they dragged Ryan toward the door. The fire roared like a living thing, eating its way across the walls. Shadow darted ahead, pawing snow clear of the porch. An ember singed the fur on his shoulder, but he didn't flinch. He barked once, sharp and commanding. The 3 men stumbled out into the snow, Ryan's head lolling between them. Cold air cut their throats like glass, but it was clean. Behind them, the cabin's roof collapsed with a roar, sparks spiraling into the storm like stars falling in reverse. Marcus pressed 2 fingers to Ryan's neck. "Still a pulse," he said, voice rough. Ethan dropped his jacket over Ryan's chest. "Stay with us," he hissed. At the tree line stood a woman in a red parka, mid-30s, black hair tucked under a fur-lined hood, phone in her gloved hands. Her breath puffed white as she whispered, "Oh my God," hardly believing what she was filming. She had come out to spot wildlife but found herself recording a rescue no one would believe without proof. Shadow limped back toward the men, ears swiveling, breath steaming. His gaze flicked to the woman, then to the dark road beyond, as though he could sense eyes watching. Marcus looked at Ethan, then at the dog. "This wasn't random," he rasped. "Someone wanted us dead." Ethan didn't answer, just pressed a hand to Ryan's cheek and stared at Shadow, some half-forgotten memory tugging at him from the old training days. Snow came harder now, sticking to scorched coats and burnt timbers. The woman lowered her phone and fumbled to call for help. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Shadow sat beside the men, panting, trembling with exhaustion but unblinking. When the first fire truck lights split through the pines, Ethan exhaled like he hadn't since the fire started. Marcus wiped soot from his face with a torn sleeve. Shadow leaned against Ethan's leg just enough for warmth. The blizzard swallowed the sound again, and for a long moment only the snow moved. Then came the roar of engines and a wash of red and blue. Firefighters doused the last of the flames. EMTs guided Ethan and Marcus onto gurneys. Oxygen masks pressed over smoke-stained faces. Ryan was lifted between them, pale and motionless but still alive. Shadow stayed close, his scorched fur smelling of smoke, eyes tracking every stranger with the quiet vigilance of a soldier. The ambulance ride blurred into a tunnel of white, Ethan clutching Ryan's limp hand and whispering words he wouldn't even remember later. Marcus sat hunched under a blanket, discipline cracked by the tremor in his hands. The snow outside thickened until the world looked erased. At Red Pine Community Hospital, the ER doors burst open and the trauma team swarmed. Dr. Celia Grant, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, led the charge, barking orders as though she'd been preparing for this moment all her life. "Get the young one to ICU. Push O2. U2 vitals and decantam. Check for carbon monoxide saturation." Ethan and Marcus had been separated from Ryan, each of them pulled into the chaos of the hospital's emergency wing. A nurse gently wiped the soot from Marcus' forehead, shining a small flashlight into his pupils. Another nurse rolled up Ethan's sleeve, drew blood, and clipped a pulse oximeter to his finger. The numbers glowed low, but not dangerously. Both men were placed on oxygen, for lines delivering fluids as their bodies slowly came down from the fire's shock. Down the hallway, glass panels revealed the ICU room where Ryan lay still under a respirator mask, tubes snaking from his arms, machines hissing and beeping in steady rhythm. Dr. Grant's team moved with quiet urgency around his bed, but the pallor of his skin stayed a stubborn gray. Ethan pressed a hand to the glass, his breath fogging the surface. Marcus stood behind him, his fists clenching and loosening, a silent rhythm of helplessness. Minutes crawled by before Dr. Grant stepped out. Her face was calm but grave, her voice measured as she said, "He inhaled too much cyanide from the accelerant. His lungs are failing. We're doing everything we can."